So, here we are. I have decided to title my book I Died It. So, this is chapter 1 in the beginning. This will be the small preview of what the book will be like. Chapter 1 In the beginning. In the beginning. When you don't know where to start at the beginning, right? So, in the beginning, the phrase that was chosen to start the religious text of the Hebrew and Christian believing peoples. What I find most interesting is the choice of the word in over the choice of the word at. At the beginning would lead one to believe it was a starting point, a single bitten piece of time. At the beginning. In, on the other hand, represents being in the midst of something. When the language was chosen for those texts, it was in the beginning, within that period of time. I bring all this up to begin my tale because this was one of the largest lessons I have learned from my experiences in life and from my death. That our existence truly is eternal and that our consciousness never dies, it merely transmutes. We, the individual, through how we live our lives and the lessons we learn, create the ultimate path of where this journey will take us upon the ending of our physical 3D forms. Life is cyclical and always loops back around like a Mobius strip or an infinity loop. The end is always the beginning. Or to put it another way, there never is an end. There is a completion of one journey that thusly thrusts us into the next. Until my death, I always thought of death as an end stop. Done. Religions out there had talked of other worlds and lives beyond this corporeal form, but it was all just thought and concepts until my consciousness went through the process of dying. So yeah, as you probably saw from the title of this book, I died it. So to start at the beginning of the story is to really start at the end, because this tale all came about from my death. What was a completion of one cycle of my life brought me back resurrected unto this plane to be here in service to others, and to share my truth and message to the world so that people's hearts and minds may be more at ease with the journeys put before them. Looping back around to the first point, the universe was created within or in the beginning. This tale will be told from the perspective of my new beginning. My phoenix rising, resurrection, and rebirth. In the beginning of this tale, well, I died. I had always expected death to be an end stop, a completion of this physical life and world and the possibility of continuation onto another realm. Now, after going through the conscious experience of death, I see and understand that the human conceptualization thus far of what death has been explained as has been mired and muddled with misunderstandings. Again, that belief that it was a full stop end when it truly is a transition. It is my wishes for when one is done reading my truth that they have a different clarity about what life and death truly are. That the term death may fall to the waysides of human language, and we begin referring to the end of this cycle of our conscious existence as a transition to the next plane. By the way, I don't have all the answers. No one truly does. Not everything I share here will be 100% accurate. All I can do is tell you my life experience and the journeys I have been on, and how they have allowed me to see and understand this life. My truth based off of my studies of life and personal experiences, all put here to page to hopefully help assist others in seeing the bigger picture and grand design of it all. On June 4th, 2021, I died. I can only state it and say it as death, because I saw and witnessed visions of things that were not of this physical plane, and mentally, consciously knew I was dying. That's why it is so difficult in figuring out where to start the story, because even though death is seen as the end, it truly was just the beginning for where my life is to go now. End, begin, all the same, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Great words of wisdom from Jim Henson, one of the early influential philosophers of my life. Taken from the Dark Crystal, it speaks to the cyclical nature of life in the world. Some people see it and get it. For some, they come to an understanding at a young age. For others, it takes more time, even lifetimes. Either way, it is not a race or a competition, and every consciousness will eventually find their nirvana and enlightenment. For some, that journey just takes longer. In no lesser terms, I'm a music festival junkie. I had been fascinated by the concept of festivals and rainbow gatherings, having never had the opportunity or taken the time to attend one until 2017. My attendance of my first festival stemmed and started from the use of hallucinogens. Back in high school, I had lots of friends that partook of LSD and mushrooms, but I was straight edge at the time and I refused to do any drugs other than drinking. From there, I got saved and was a born again Christian that got married, started a family, and did the standard life, completely missing out on any early in life hallucinogenic experiences. Then, in 2017, a friend invited me over to see if I cared to imbibe with him on my first ever hallucinogenic journey. I gladly accepted. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. We spent most of the time just talking and watching music videos. It was the visuals from it that started to make me further question what truly is this reality about us. I had to go back the next day and rewatch some of the music videos just to wrap my head around what I visually saw. That journey of discovery was one tab of LSD, my first ever. I loved it. It was such an amazing experience. Why had I missed out on this for so long? Why was it ever made illegal? How could this not be something that should be required for every human to go through and experience? Like the natives sending out their young men coming of age, most people's warrior journeys in the present should be a good dose of LSD, or as McKenna said, a heroic dose of mushrooms and a journey into the inner workings of one's own psyche. Upon falling in love with the experience of dosing, I started on a year-long adventure of seeing what my mind could take on the hallucinogenic journey. From dosing 1250 UG initial doses to eating half a sheet over the course of 5 days to see how long I could keep myself in a constant trippy mind state, to dosing and letting loose at music festivals. I pushed my mind to most of the limits I thought I could. Then, in 2020, I began experimenting with DMT. Had tried once in 2017 and twice in 2019 with no blast off. I'd always told myself I would never buy DMT, but only partake when it came to me. Well, an acquaintance was selling some, so for the first time in over 10 years after I had broken my ankle, I got back on a bike and rode out to procure some Deems. On the ride back, I ended up hitting a pothole and going headfirst into the concrete. I thought I had broken my arm, so I went to the emergency room and had x-rays taken. Thankfully, because of those x-rays, I have found that I have some spinal issues that I am working on healing myself, but that's another story for another time. In light amounts, it allows you to see the energies. Nope, skipped a paragraph. Upon making it back with the Deemsters, I spent the fall of 2020 experimenting and attempting to blast off. I never hit that point because something in the back of my mind always kept stopping me from pushing beyond. If you ever get the chance to partake in DMT, whether you blast off or not, the experience will forever change your perspective of reality. Through my partaking and other stories, I have come to understandings of what Deems allows one to see. In light amounts, it allows you to see the energies that flow about us. Our brains normally only allow us to see certain portion of the light spectrum. With the energetic waves of radio frequencies, light frequencies, and sound frequencies about us, we perceive them through certain senses. While on hallucinogens, one is able to visually see some of those elements. The tracers one sees while on LSD is us able to watch fluctuations in the speed of physical time. Mushrooms have allowed me to see wind move in a clear blue sky as though it was like smoke flowing in water. DMT has allowed me to see the energetic patterns of what makes up this 3D realm. Same as with the theory of we are living in a simulation, well, we are. Plant medicines allow us to hack the simulation and see it for what it really is. To the point of blasting off on DMT allowing us to commune with heaven or the fifth dimensional levels and above. Now, I say heaven because that was the word created from the past to describe these other realms that present-day science has termed dimensions. Same concept, just different perspectives and terms used. Perceptions and terms used. Just like with the story of the Tower of Babel, there has always been consternation and division within tribal groups, religion, and science because of each group's perceptions and usage of language. Many cultures seeking the same answers, finding them, but ultimately not agreeing on who has the right answer. Thing is, most all of them are right in some form or fashion. Most seek to follow the same source consciousness, each culture using their individual terminologies for what source is. Yahweh, Allah, Vishnu, God, or the many other terminologies used to describe the same living source energy that is within us all. That is what Yeshua spoke of so many years ago that has since been misinterpreted. His statement that he was the Son of God was not him limiting it to himself. He is not the one and only Son of God, We are all sons and daughters of Source. We are all a bit, piece, and part of that Source consciousness. We all have the ability to gain Christhood while in this life. At the same point, as much as we can be Christ, we can also be the Antichrist. They are allegorical terms for the top levels of the scales of both high and low, as above and so below, depending on which path you take on this journey. Like the angel on the shoulder and the devil on the other, we can so choose to live in the love of divine Source, or take the left-hand path and follow our own desires, bringing about pain and misery for those about us. Life can become your plaything when you realize your inherent godhood. When you realize you are a son or daughter of Source and have the ability to do anything you put your consciousness into. Had gotten into a philosophical conversation with someone one time, attempting to explain this concept with his response of, "Have fun with your belief that you're God." Thing is, I never once said that. Just like Yeshua never once said that he was God or a God. The false mindset is one who believes themselves to be a God. The true mindset is one who understands we are all a beautiful piece of the Source of all, and we are a part of God, not a God. Tying this all together, my death came from a major hallucinogenic experience at a music festival. Some state they believe I just had an ego death because of the substance used, but in my journey I saw and experienced so much that defies what we know as reality and what was more than just an egoistic journey. From what I have gathered from the DMT community, when you blast off, you are actually dying, consciously, but still maintaining your 3D avatar so to be able to return and not just stay in the next realm of the fifth dimensional heaven. My death was similar in nature, but more muddled with being in a trippy mind state. On the day of the occasion when I died, I had eaten about 5 grams of mushrooms I had brought with me. A co-worker had brought some he had grown himself, and then I had another 2 or 3 grams of his. Then, upon journeying around the campsites at the fest, I found a kind gentleman that gave me 2 gel tabs to take on top of the mushrooms, on the shroomies. At about 3 to 4 hours into the trip, I was offered some cannabis oil, dabs, from a nectar collector. I took 2 rips, and within 5 to 10 minutes later is when my mind began to crack, and I realized I was dying. You realized you were dying? How does one come to that realization and understanding? I wish I could fully explain in words, but it was just the conversation. The words used from the others I was with began to become words from Yahweh. 5 different individuals all speaking as though they were coming out from one mind. Source, Yahweh, God's mind. Funny thing about my mind is I have a photographic memory for what I visually see, but I can't remember conversations and what was said. I can remember the topics we talked about and a generalization of people's thoughts and opinions, but to quote anything after the fact is near impossible. So I can't say I recall all of what was specifically said throughout the night, but certain statements and the generalization of conversations have been retained. It all began with the conversation about going to the Jelly Domes. You should go to the Jelly Dome. The Jelly Domes. The Jelly Domes are where you should go. Go to the Jelly Domes. We need to go to the Jelly Domes. The Jelly Domes are where we go. Go to the Jelly Domes. Yep. Chapter 1.